Gus Sorola, the kind of backbone of RTX. So, Gus, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Hanging in there.
Oh yeah, hanging in there with 30,000 attendees. How's that?
It's a lot of work, you know. I'm going on very little sleep, but a lot of coffee. So if I'm a little jittery, it's not that I'm nervous. I'm just a little wired on coffee right now.
So about tripled from last year's. Is that correct?
Yeah, we don't have the final tally yet. I think we're actually going to be over 30,000. We'll definitely know, by the end of the day tomorrow what our final number is. But yeah, it'll probably more than triple since last year.
So when it comes to RTX, what's like the biggest trial or the hardest thing to do when it comes to scheduling everything at RTX?
Well, there's a lot of challenges you look at. One challenge is scheduling. When luckily Barbara takes care of all that, and she does a great job with it. Where you have so many people with so many panels and activities that they want to see in internal scheduling, that we have to keep this giant spreadsheet of where people are going to be at any given time. So that's one thing. Another one is how do we scale the event so that we have enough stuff for people to do. We're constantly trying to maintain a balance between the number of badges sold and the amount of stuff we have to do on the floor. So that's why we'll play this delicate game of, do we really have enough space and enough stuff for more people? Then we'll increase our size a little more.
So what's the biggest thing when it comes to RTX? Like, what's your highest priority of getting stuff done? Like, getting enough panels for everyone, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing that we focus on getting done is, entertainment. We have to find panels, and we have to find exhibitors willing to come down and show off stuff on the floor. And luckily, everyone at Rooster Teeth's really eager and happy to do panels, so that's always easy. And we have a ton of great partners who want to come out and exhibit. We're so happy to have this year. Insomniac Games is out for the first time, showing Sunset Overdrive. We got Bungie out with Destiny, and of course we've got 343, who I think has been to every RTX. They're showing off some great Halo stuff, and we're so psyched to have these big tent poles. And then we also have smaller exhibitors, even local people. We have indie games out, like 2DX, Firma Studios. We got local places like Toy Joy. So I feel like we really run the gamut and have a lot of great content on the floor for people.
That's great. So I heard in one of the most previous Rooster Teeth podcasts that you are about like 98% of the podcasts. You fill up the majority of like attendance-wise.
Yeah, I've been on about 98% of the podcast. Yeah.
So what is it like typically running a podcast like?
It's interesting. So what we have to do is, we have to figure out, one of the first things we do for every week is we have to figure out who's going to be on it. So it's a matter of scheduling and getting people, seeing what their availability is, getting them to come in. And then the rest of the podcast production has actually changed over time. At first it was, we're just going to set up a couple of mics, we're going to talk. Then it was, let's set up some cameras to record it. And now it's, let's set up some cameras and stream it. So, we had to build a streaming infrastructure, a control room. And it's actually become so much work that I'm mainly talent on the podcast now. I show up and I'll take part in the podcast. But we have our director of broadcast is Patrick Salazar, who oversees our broadcast division, as we call it, and makes sure that our control room works, that all our infrastructure is going. And that's his full-time job, is just supporting that and make sure all that goes.
Now, we see a lot in previous podcasts that Gavin can't really get on his headphones right. So what's your biggest pet peeve when it comes to the podcast?
My early pet peeves were, of course, headphones backwards, people banging the desk. Luckily, we don't have our mics on desks anymore, so that doesn't happen. I think my current biggest pet peeve is Gavin shaking his leg. He shakes his leg. I don't know if he's got restless leg or something, because I can feel it shaking my chair when he does that.
Does it mess with the audio?
No, it doesn't really mess with the audio. It's fine. It's probably imperceivable, but I can see it, and it bothers me. And also people spilling drinks. Oh, yeah. It's like, if you're at home, you don't want someone spilling something on your couch.
Mm-hmm. What is the process of introducing someone new to the podcast?
It's difficult. We actually try not to do that anymore. We've pretty much settled in a core group of attendees for it, just because it's the audience likes the familiarity, I think, and knowing who they're hearing.
Well, you have some special guests sometimes, like Freddie W., and then some Dan the Man shows up quite a bit. So, is there anything, are you ever going to see special guests on full podcasts and not just kind of pop in?
I don't know. It seems like the audience is happy with the core group. We love special guests, and I think that, we're going to try to hopefully expand it. And that's kind of why we did the Freddie W. Kumail special guest spot recently. And that was kind of an experiment to see how that went. And I think that's a good formula. We may continue doing that, where we have our regular podcast and then we record supplemental interactions, supplemental interviews, and then tack that onto the end of the podcast.
Have you ever thought of retiring from the podcast, or?
Yeah, I think about it a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a constant grind, and I think a lot of people don't realize is, we live stream the podcast on Monday. I show up to work Monday at 9 a.m. Work my full day, and then we go live at 7:30. Right. Then we have to. So Mondays are really long days. I'll spend 13 hours there at the studio doing all my normal stuff, and then working on the podcast. So it's a lot of work, but I love it. So I'm gonna stick around.
So out of the 30,000 attendees, I bet like 29,999 people want to be in the position you are. So what do you have? Do you have any tips for new podcasters or new people that actually want to become YouTubers like yourself?
I think the biggest piece of advice that people should follow is you have to release content regularly. If you have an erratic release schedule or you go long periods of time without releasing, that's not good. You got to maintain a release cycle that you stick to, and just stick with it. If you're worried about it not being good, just start doing it. That's kind of what we did with the patch. I felt like we wanted to do a video game podcast for a while, but we just kept thinking about it and kept thinking about it, and we weren't doing it. So finally, one day, Bernie said, "Let's just do it. Let's just start. Let's just go do one right now." And then he said, "Okay." And you can see the patches evolved over time, and it's like you will refine the process. Just get started.
So if you ever did retire, like you're talking about, who would you give the position up to out of the constants of the RT podcast?
If I talk about, I joked about. I didn't say I would. There's a constant crew there. Bernie, Gavin are there just every week as well. And I'm sure there's tons of people willing to step in.
Would you even give the responsibility to Gavin though?
Why not? Gavin's a responsible guy. Gavin takes care of the slow-mo guys.
Well, you guys kind of insult Gavin a lot jokingly around, but would he be able to do that?
He doesn't have to execute. Remember, we have Patrick making sure everything gets done. He just has to show up every week and be dumb.
Which mission accomplished already. Well, thank you for your time, Gus, and have a great RTX.
Thanks, man. Hope you do too.